Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 72 of Code Lyoko, Crash Course. Today's episode is a kind of sort of filler one. Pretty much concerned with all the Jeremy being is concerned about all the recent Xana attacks because pretty much for the last few episodes at least the attacks have been mostly centered on him or Aelita. Mostly Aelita with like maybe one directed toward him, but whatever. So, bottom line, with these attacks, Jeremy's begun kind of thinking about what would happen if something happened to him or Aelita. And he realizes that if they were gone, then that would be it. Game over. Xana would win, since Jeremy is the one that knows all the technical aspects of the supercomputer and how to get everyone into Lyoko and so forth, and Aelita is Aelita. She's the one that deactivates the towers, and yeah, she's gone. That's it. And she's gone. That's it. They're screwed. As such, Jeremy decides that on the off chance that something happens to them, he wants Odd, Auric, and Aelita to pretty much just he wants to give them a crash course on how to use a supercomputer should anything happen to him. The group, of course, is kind of a little hesitant, but they realize that Jeremy has a point, so they go along with him and pretty much take a afternoon to go to the lab and essentially get, well, as the episode title says, a crash course. The only one who doesn't end up going is Aelita, because this episode has her taking part in an audition. It has her going through final auditions to be the opening act for the Subsonics. So she's going to be off doing that, but she says she'll have her phone on her if anything goes wrong. And so yeah, things go wrong. Jeremy is ultimately able to give the group some basic stuff to using the supercomputer, like and which they were able to test out by with Auric virtualizing Odd into the ice sector. But shortly after they get all these basics down, Xana launches an attack. He creates a polymorphic specter that takes on the form of a government agent, and the very first thing he does is form the specter in the factory in the computer lab, and take a couple cables and zap Jeremy. It doesn't kill him, but it does knock him out for the majority of the episode. As a result, the group now has to fend for themselves as the Spectre goes off to take care of Aelita. As such, pretty much it becomes to a divide and conquer. They manage to text Aelita and tell her about what's going on, and when she's finished with her audition, she sees the text and runs out to go help them, but she has to avoid the Spectre. In the meantime, Yumi ends up going out to try and help give Aelita some backup in the real world, while Auric is trying to find a way to get Odd to where the activated tower is, as Odd's in the ice sector and the activated tower is in the mountain sector. As ultimately, as such, it becomes a kind of game of back and forth. They try and figure out what to do, but ultimately, while Auric is able to virtualize in the overbike for Odd so that he can at least move around faster, the only thing Ulrich manages to do that's worth any value is setting a timed virtualization, which allows him to virtualize himself into the mountain sector. Although it's kind of amusing is that apparently the time virtualization program the code for it is Big Fat Cheesehead. I'm sure that might be a reference to another episode. I don't remember, but when asked about it, Alita blushes and says it's kind of a joke that me and Jeremy have it. So I think that's cute. I like that. But yeah, Ulrich managed to get into the mountain sector, and ultimately Yumi managed to meet up with Alita just as the Spectre appears. So they managed to outmaneuver it enough so that they're able to get to the factory, and Yumi is able to virtualize Alita in. Unfortunately, even when Yumi does this, the Spectre still manages to get in and pretty much beats the crap out of Yumi. As such, on Lyoko, Odd, Ulrich, and Aelita managed to meet up where the activated tower is, because Odd did manage to find the away tower to get there, though it took him a few tries, and he lost a few life points to at least couple blocks. And the instant they hear that Yumi is in danger, Ulrich devirtualizes Odd so that he can go out there and help her, while he and Aelita deal with the monsters guarding the tower, plus William because he's leading the group. As such, things continue to go the way you expect them to. Odd managed to get to the real world, and he manages to defend Yumi enough so that manages to shock the clone so that it briefly disperses, so Yumi can get away. and Odd manages to virtualize Yumi into the mountain sector to give Ulrich and Aelita some backup against the Crabs and William, since the Crabs are the monsters. Which, as such, one by one, the monsters each fall. On Eventually, it becomes a standoff between them. Eventually, becomes a standoff between them all, as between William and the group. But ultimately, they manage to take William down. Which this episode also kind of confirms something that that was showcased in an earlier episode, that when even William's life points drop to 0, he doesn't get devirtualized. Because as they showcased in earlier episodes and even mentioned in the last episode, if one falls into the digital sea, they're pretty much stuck in Lyoko. And while William has been able to leave Lyoko before, even while falling in the digital sea, keep in mind that that was when William was under Xana's influence. So you can make the argument that Xana most likely found a way to hack that. Well, as we probably as we saw, Xana could probably find ways to hack the devirtualization process to let William out whenever he wants. Maybe kind of making his own mock-up version of the Code Earth protocol. So you can easily make the argument that pretty much it just showcases that if William is leaving Lyoko, he can only leave with right now. He can only leave with Xana's help, and if his life points drop to 0, then he most likely just goes poof, Xana most likely can reconstitute him because as we established, at least I think they're linked, or at least Xana has some influence over him, since Xana doesn't need to activate a tower to possess him. But bottom line, the episode showcases that William, when his life points drop to 0, doesn't get devirtualized because they defeat him and he disappears into a cloud of black smoke. Bottom line, though, with him gone, they manage to deactivate the tower just as the Spectre tries to kill Odd, and ultimately the day is saved. Jeremy ends up waking up, and the episode ends with Aelita telling the group that she actually managed to make the cut to be the opening act for the Subsonics, despite the fact that she ran out at the end, which is kind of, I think is nice. And Jeremy is ultimately content that the group can take care of themselves if anything were to happen to him. So the episode's all right. It's all right. It's actually some really cute and decent. It's actually some cute filler, for the most part. It's all good, but it's cute filler. Pretty much, I don't know if what's going to happen in this episode is going to be reflected in later episodes. If the group is going to use this newfound knowledge to work the supercomputer while Jeremy is probably dispatched with something else, I don't know. But for what we have here, it is overall just kind of a cute episode with an interesting premise. The idea of Jeremy, who acts as their technical support, being knocked aside early on, and so the group has to essentially work on their own without him. And the episode is actually kind of nice as we see Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi all kind of trading the role. It's just kind of throwing the role around from each of them. Because just one by one, they each try and find... Because again, Jeremy said in the beginning of the episode that, if something were to happen to him, they'd be on their own. So it's of course, they would need to take advantage of it. So seeing them in the situation is actually kind of a nice little way of doing it. Just one by one, they each have to try and learn the basics of the supercomputer. And while they do struggle with it, it is nice to see them actually be able to do that and have to operate the technical side of things while Jeremy is disposed of. As such, it's kind of nice seeing them as they try and figure everything out, as they figure out one aspect of the supercomputer but struggle with another, or realizing where one of them could be better suited to be on Lyoko while someone else could stay in the real world and deal with everything. I like all that. It's actually really nice stuff that shows the group that feels like the group is growing more in terms of their war on Xana. That they're actually thinking ahead and planning for these sort of eventualities, and the fact that it happened in this episode showcases that they have the right idea doing it right now. Now, of course, the fact that it happened in this episode is, of course, the plot stuff. But again, it's nice that they're actually thinking ahead and trying this out and actually planning for this scenario should it ever happen again. Because, Jeremy is right. He and Aelita are two of the big players, and while Aelita is someone that can't be replaced, Jeremy is just their technical support. And while he plays a very important role, if he goes, yeah, sorry, he does play a very important role, but he's not a fighter. So if something were to happen to him, then the group wouldn't be able to get to Lyoko. So of course it makes sense that they'd have to plan for this and figure it out on their own. So the fact that they're able to do this crash course, I think, is nice. I think it would be beneficial if we saw like little by little the rest of the season of him possibly giving them tips and pointers, because even with the knowledge he gave them, they're still struggling in some areas. So maybe it'd be nice to see this more expanded on. But the fact that they actually thought about it and Jeremy said, we need to plan for this should it ever happen, it's some nice forward thinking and shows that they're actually trying to think of new ways around possibly stopping Xana, which I like that. I like that. Another thing I liked in this episode is furthering the Aelita stuff with the subsonics. It's a little part of the episode and just serves as the B plot to keep Aelita distracted. But I like that we actually see more follow up to that in this episode, like seeing it follow up from that one episode, and we see her now in this episode when Aelita is continuing her audition process to be the opening act for the Subsonics. It's really nice, and I like seeing that continue to be expanded on, especially when Aelita actually asks Jeremy to sit out the crash course, which I like that. I kind of like Jeremy's response to that. Is it's a little biased, but also shows character growth, because it's biased because he lets her walk away. It's like, yeah, you're right. I'm probably being too overprotective. You just go ahead, and then go ahead, even though he pretty much gave the group the riot act. Which, to be fair, Aelita already knows this stuff. She's just as technically savvy as Jeremy is. So odds are she wouldn't need to be part of the crash course. So there's an excuse there. But but he was gonna have her be there just in case. But at the same time, the fact that he's not making a big fuss over, oh, but this is important. You have to be here. It doesn't. I don't. That stuff's just dumb. You shouldn't do that. This is more important. The fact that he didn't make a big stink over that and understood that Aelita has her own life to live and this is important to her. It shows some character growth on Jeremy's part, that he is taking into consideration more about what Aelita wants, and he is trying to be understanding. It's like, you know what, you're right. I'm being a bit overprotective. Go ahead, have fun. I can probably deal with this on my own. And it's nice. It's really nice, especially when Aelita's response says, give him a quick peck on the cheek and just see him blush and smile. It's just cute. I love it. It's a small thing, but I like that. Like that. Otherwise, the rest of the episode is just kind of more. It's again a good decent premise with some nice forward thinking, and they do take advantage of it somewhat, with the group having to pretty much not only have to work with what Jeremy's already taught them, but also kind of have to work by the seat of their pants, because Jeremy only taught them so much. Because again, we saw Ulrich having problems with materializing in a vehicle, because Odd wanted his overboard, but Ulrich could only virtualize in the overbike. Which, while Odd managed to make lemons out of lemonade with it, one, it's not his preferred vehicle choice, and two, he virtualized it on the other side of the monsters that are currently shooting at Odd. So yeah, this is kind of a bad thing. So yeah, good job virtualizing it in. Now there are two more things he probably should have gotten it closer though. But yeah, I like that. And again, it's nice seeing them just kind of trade it off. Like first we have Ulrich at the seat before he managed to get himself virtualized. Then Yumi has to take over to get Lita in, but then she gets taken out when the Spectre reappears, so Odd has to go in and take her place. So he gets devirtualized while Yumi goes in to take his place. I like that. It's prioritizing. It's them being smart, them being able to work around the scenario, and while they're struggling, they do manage to use the basic knowledge that they have to continue going forward and ultimately and ultimately stop this current plan. So yeah, I like that. It's handled decently. It's handled decently, and it's actually entertaining to watch. So overall, while I think the episode is kind of filler, I do believe it's entertaining filler. It's an interesting premise. The fact that they're addressing it showcases forward thinking on the group's part, shows them actually continuing to grow. We see some decent character stuff with the group as they try and work through it, and of course we get some nice nice character moments with Aelita and Jeremy as we see Aelita to further her music career. So yeah, that's about it. again, overall, it's a decent episode. It's an alright episode. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.